Humanity did not stumble into war by accident. It forged war with intention, curiosity, and fear intertwined into a single spark. From the first sharpened stone to the final planet-breaker missile, conflict became the language through which nations spoke when words failed. Borders were drawn with blood long before ink, and history remembered victors more clearly than the fallen. Peace in those early ages was merely the silence between battles, fragile and temporary. Every generation inherited weapons sharper than the last, and ideologies that justified using them. Children learned the names of enemies before they learned the names of stars. The sky above Earth darkened not from clouds, but from satellites watching one another endlessly. War became an industry, a science, and finally an art perfected with cold efficiency. When humanity reached beyond its planet, it carried its conflicts with it like ancestral scars. The first colonies argued over resources, the second over ideology, the third over survival itself. In mastering the tools of destruction, humans believed they were mastering control. Yet each victory only proved how easily everything could be lost. The Age of Fire burned bright, and it showed humanity exactly how terrifying it had become. The wars that followed were no longer about territory, but about deterrence. Humanity built weapons not to use them, but to ensure no one else dared first. Armies became algorithms, soldiers became data points, and battles were decided before the first shot. Entire planets were glassed to make statements no one would ever forget. The cost of war grew so high that even victory felt like failure. Civilizations rose knowing they could be erased in minutes. Fear replaced hatred as the primary motivator. The paradox was clear but ignored. The safer humans tried to be through force, the closer they came to extinction. During the Great Escalation, a single mistake nearly ended everything. A false signal triggered fleets triggered counterstrikes, and history held its breath. Only a last-second override saved humanity from itself. That moment burned into collective memory deeper than any battlefield loss. For the first time, humans truly understood that winning the next war might mean losing the future. After the near annihilation, something unprecedented happened. Humanity paused. No treaty forced it, no conqueror demanded it. Leaders, soldiers, and civilians alike looked into the mirror of their own power. They saw that they had become a species capable of ending all stories, including their own. Military academies began teaching restraint alongside strategy. Weapons research shifted toward control systems rather than greater destruction. Defense no longer meant retaliation, but prevention. Humanity did not disarm, instead it learned discipline. War doctrines were rewritten with one central principle: survival over dominance. Conflict still occurred, but escalation was treated as failure rather than success. For the first time, peace was not defined as weakness. It was defined as mastery. The mirror moment marked the beginning of wisdom forged through fear. Peace did not arrive suddenly, it was guarded like a fragile flame. Humanity maintained vast arsenals not for conquest, but as reminders of consequences. Every weapon became a lesson, every battlefield a warning etched into history. Interstellar councils replaced war rooms, though both were built by the same minds. Disputes were resolved with the understanding of what violence truly cost. Veterans became philosophers, generals became diplomats. Humanity finally accepted that power without restraint was self-destruction. The stars became places of cooperation rather than competition. Alien civilizations watching humanity remained cautious, remembering its violent past. But they also observed something rare, a species that had learned from its own shadow. Peace was not the absence of strength, it was strength held in check. And that discipline became humanity's greatest achievement. In the end, humans did not abandon war, they transcended it. They understood it fully and therefore no longer worshipped it. Their legacy was not the weapons they built, but the restraint they practiced. Future generations studied ancient wars with disbelief and humility. They learned that peace was never a gift, it was a skill earned through suffering. Humanity stood among the stars as a quiet power, capable yet controlled. Other species feared them at first, then respected them, and finally trusted them. Because humans had proven the hardest victory of all. They had defeated their own impulse to destroy. Only after mastering war did humanity truly learn peace. Long after humanity believed it had mastered peace, the universe tested that belief. It did not come as a war declaration or a fleet on the horizon. It arrived quietly, through signals older than human civilization itself. A pattern repeating across dead stars, shattered worlds, and silent systems. Explorers first thought it was a natural phenomenon, the echo of collapsing galaxies. But the pattern was deliberate, methodical, and unmistakably intelligent. Wherever it appeared, civilizations vanished without battle, without resistance, without trace. Planets were not destroyed, they were emptied. Cities remained standing, machines powered down gently, and lives simply ended. Humanity named it the silence. Panic did not spread as it once would have. There were no rushed mobilizations or threats of annihilation. Instead, humanity studied, observed, and waited. Old instincts screamed for preemptive strikes. But discipline held firm. The lesson of history whispered louder than fear. They remembered the great escalation and the brink they once stood upon. This enemy could not be deterred by force alone. It had erased empires that never even raised a weapon. Humanity sent no war fleets at first. They sent historians, linguists, and strategists. They searched ancient ruins and lost archives across the stars. Slowly, a horrifying truth emerged. The silence was not a conqueror. It was a response. An ancient mechanism designed by long-extinct beings who believed war itself was a cosmic disease. Any civilization reaching a certain threshold of destructive capability triggered it. Not by intent, but by potential. The silence did not judge motives. It judged capacity. Humanity now faced a paradox beyond anything it had prepared for. Its survival depended on everything it had learned about restraint. Yet the very mastery of war that allowed peace marked it for erasure. Debate spread across the interstellar councils. Some argued for total disarmament. Others warned that weakness would invite annihilation from lesser threats. A few voices whispered that perhaps humanity deserved this fate, that the universe itself rejected violent species. For the first time since the mirror moment, unity fractured. Not into factions of hatred, but into philosophies of survival. What did peace mean when existence itself was threatened? Was restraint still wisdom if it led to extinction? Humanity did not rush to an answer. They had learned the cost of haste. The silence drew closer, system by system. Every erased civilization strengthened the certainty of its purpose. Humanity realized that hiding was impossible. Fleeing was futile. And fighting was meaningless. The only path forward lay in redefining what mastery truly meant. A single proposal changed everything. Not from a general or politician, but from a veteran strategist turned philosopher. She argued that humanity had mistaken control of weapons for mastery of war. True mastery, she claimed, was the ability to end conflict without violence. To render war obsolete not by fear, but by irrelevance. If the silence measured destructive capacity, then humanity must demonstrate something greater. Not power, but transformation. The plan was unprecedented. Humanity would not disarm, nor would it attack. Instead, it would reveal itself completely. Every weapon, every fleet, every defensive system would be exposed openly to the galaxy. Not as a threat, but as a confession. Alongside this revelation, humanity would dismantle the conditions that made war necessary. Resource scarcity, territorial competition, and ideological isolation. They would share technologies once guarded as ultimate deterrents. Energy systems capable of sustaining entire worlds. Defense grids that protected without retaliation. Economic models that removed conquest as a motive. Many believed this act would invite invasion, that lesser powers would seize the opportunity. But humanity accepted that risk. Peace was never safe, only necessary. When the broadcast was sent, the galaxy changed. Civilizations, long hidden, emerged cautiously. Enemies became observers. Rivals became participants. Humanity did not demand trust. It offered vulnerability. The silence responded. For the first time, it altered its pattern. Instead of erasure, it paused. Humanity had crossed the threshold of destructive potential long ago. But it had now crossed something else. A threshold of collective restraint never recorded before. The ancient mechanism evaluated more than weapons. It measured intent encoded in systems. It detected redundancy designed for survival rather than dominance. Defense networks without escalation protocols. Artificial intelligences trained to de-escalate rather than optimize destruction. For the first time in eons, the silence hesitated. Yet hesitation was not mercy. The test was not over. A final trial emerged. The silence activated a controlled conflict within human space. A manufactured crisis designed to provoke war instincts. Resource shortages, communication failures, and engineered misunderstandings. The kind of spark that once ignited galactic wars. Humanity recognized the pattern. Old instincts surged. Fleets stood ready. Weapons systems hummed. But no command to fire was given. Instead, humanity responded with transparency. Every manipulated signal was shared openly. Every shortage was addressed collectively. Every accusation was investigated publicly. They chose patience over pride, dialogue over dominance, time over terror. The silence watched. Cycles passed, and humanity did not break. Where once humans would have reached for annihilation, they now reached for understanding. Where once war would have been inevitable, it became unnecessary. The silence began to withdraw. Not defeated, but satisfied. The ancient creators of the mechanism had believed that war was an incurable flaw. They had built extermination as prevention. But humanity proved something unexpected. That intelligence could evolve beyond its own violence. That mastery did not mean control of destruction, but control of self. When the silence vanished, it left behind a final message. Not in words, but in absence. The test was passed. Humanity emerged changed forever. No longer merely a species that learned peace after war, but a species that taught peace to the universe. The stars no longer watched humanity with fear alone. They watched with hope. Because if the most violent species history had known could learn restraint, then perhaps war itself was not inevitable. Humanity kept its weapons, but they became symbols rather than tools, reminders of what mastery truly meant. And so the final lesson spread across the galaxy. Peace was not the opposite of war. Peace was what came after understanding it completely.